it for you. So this is the growth measure selection guidance document that you will find on the team website. Can you see, is this large enough? Okay. So it talks about the different types of growth measures. So we have essentially 6. We put them in about 6 buckets. We have the individual value added scores from TVAS. Those automatically are included in the LOE for any teacher that generates one. We have individual student growth portfolio scores, which are also automatically included. As a district, you don't have to do anything for those scores to show up. The third type is the individual state board approved universal reading screener scores, which will be automatically included in the LOE for each educator. Those scores are not currently in T-Encompass, but we expect them to be there within the next week or two. The other 3 types are the composites. We've got school level TVAS composites, we have district level TVAS composites, and we have the custom feeder at the school or district level. We're going to talk more about each one of those in just a second. So all teachers need, even a teacher who is going to be a type 1, 2, or 3, need to have a TVAS selection that is a 4, 5, or 6 as a growth measure. So where that score goes in T-Encompass is under growth measure, and then you know the other ones will show underneath. Their individual growth score will be included in their LOE, but just in the event that their LOE, that they don't generate an individual growth score, we want this back up in there. I talked a little bit about the custom feeder measures. Those are measures that for any school that does not, a teacher in a school that does not generate, or somebody that's at a multiple schools can pick those. Those scores have to be loaded by the district. Those will not automatically generate. So this lists all of the types of composites that we have. So we have school and system-wide composites. Those will consist of any test that is given in your district. TCAP, which is 4 through 8, EOCs, and 3rd grade, provided you get 3rd grade scores if you give the 2nd grade assessment in the current and the prior year. So all of those scores are in what we call the system or school-wide composites. So the measure name is just composite. That includes all subject areas that you have available for your system or district. So you have all of your math, high school math, English, biology, and U.S. history, along with your 4-8 TCAP scores for ELA and math. You have your TCAP science for grades 5-8 and TCAP social studies for 6-8. And it would also include your 3rd grade math and ELA scores. The literacy composite includes any literacy scores that you have in your district or school. So if you happen to be a K-12 school and give the 2nd grade assessment, you would have 3rd grade English language arts. That would be the early grades. You would have TCAP English language arts, grades 4 through 8, and you would have English 1 and 2. Numeracy is the same for the math measures. Literacy and numeracy is a combination of all of those measures. And then a system-wide composite for science would be the science measures you have, biology and TCAP 5 through 8. And social studies is the same, U.S. history and social studies grades 6-8. Then we have other composites. We have just a TCAP EOC composite. They all follow the same pattern. So these composites would only include TCAP 4 through 8 and EOC scores. So the composite is all of those scores that your district or school has. Literacy would just be your TCAP 4-8 and English 1 and 2. Numeracy would be algebra 1, 2, and geometry, or integrated math 1, 2, and 3, and your TCAP math grades 4 through 8. Literacy and numeracy is the combination of those two. Science would be biology and TCAP grades 5, 8, and social studies would be U.S. history and TCAP social studies, which is grades 6, 8. If you're looking at just a TCAP measure, those are just measures generated from the TCAP test, which are the tests given in grades 4 through 8. Your EOC composites, those are just composites generated with high school assessments, your end of course assessments. And then we have 2 additional measures at the high school level for CTE students and CTE concentrators. CTE students are students who took 1 or more CTE courses during the year. And a CTE concentrator would be students who took 2 or more courses during the year in a single program of study. So CTE students could also be a concentrator depending on how many courses they take and what program of study they're in. So those students, if they're a CTE concentrator and they took the Algebra 1 exam, their score would be used in the Algebra 1 TVAS score. We have all of these for your EOCs. We've got the composite, which includes all EOCs. Literacy is just English 1 and 2. Numeracy, Algebra 1, 2, and Geometry, or Integrated Math 1, 2, and 3. Literacy and Numeracy are the combinations. Science is Biology. And then EOC Social Studies is U.S. History. School and system-wide composites for 3rd grade, which is the early grades. It is only possible to calculate the 3rd grade if you give the 2nd grade assessment in 2021 and in 21-22 and 22-23. You have to give it in the current year and the prior year. So these would just be literacy and numeracy. The composite is the combination of both. Literacy is your 3rd grade ELA, math, numeracy is your 3rd grade math, and then the combination is the same. The early grades literacy and numeracy will be the same score as your composite because it's only 2 scores. There are some other definitions on the rest of this, and there's some things for you to consider when helping your teachers select these measures or selecting these measures for your teachers. So if you think about a school, you need to think about where your teachers are staffed. Will they generate a TVAS composite? You know, if it's an alternative school, they're not going to generate a TVAS composite, more than likely. You're a pre-K, kindergarten center, or a school with only untested grades will not generate. So that would involve a custom feeder option for those type of teachers. You do need to submit these into T-Encompass. There is a deadline for that. The most efficient way to do it is to use the import wizard. There are directions. I will show you where those directions are later. And then periodically throughout the year, you need to review those to check. You're going to want to check, should the teacher be marked PYE? Is this staff? Should they be in a non-instructional role? Staffing changes. If you have somebody come in after the school year has started, you've already done this, you need to remember to go in to do this.
Amy, we have several questions that have come up about this document in particular.
Okay.
So if you will go back to page 2, I think it will answer. I'll read the question and then I think the answer will be on page 2.
Okay.
The question is, will you clarify the options for TVAS composite? More specifically, all teachers should pick school-wide composite, or can they also pick literacy and numeracy, science, social studies? Does that make sense?
That does. They need to pick one of those. They can pick the composite. If it's a teacher that has an influence, you're going to want it to be most tightly aligned to what that teacher teaches. So if it's a foreign language teacher, they may just want to pick literacy. If it is a physics teacher, they may want to just pick the science. They might want to pick numeracy or literacy, but it needs to be whatever they're most aligned to. They don't have to compete. They don't have to pick the overall composite. They can pick one of the others. Does that answer that question?
Yes, I think so. If it doesn't, Kimberly, if you'll let us know in the chat and we'll clarify. Our next question is those 22-23 weightings. Can you show us where we can find that on the team website?
They're not on the team website at this moment.
They are in the teacher evaluator handbook.
They are in the teacher evaluator handbook. We are working diligently to get some guidance out around that, and we hope to have that. There will be a webinar talking about these and explaining these soon. We do not have a date for that at this moment.
Okay. Going back to that document.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. We have a handful more questions about that. For the feeder schools, the composite should be chosen, not the other TVAS measures, for example, literacy. And then I think that this one aligns to what someone says later down. I'll read the second one. It says the confusion is using the word composite to represent all the choices, as well as some of the names of the measures. So if you will, again, just show us on page 2, you see the title is, these are all the different composites. And yes, some of them are named composite, but the word literacy, numeracy, these are all school-wide composite scores.
Yeah, these are all composite scores. So technically this is the literacy composite and the numeracy composite. This is your overall composite, which contains everything. The custom feeder, you will choose one of these also. So if you are in a school that does not, that's a K2 school that will not generate scores, and your next school is a 3-8 school or 3-5 school, whatever grade level, you could, for that school, you would select a custom feeder option when it came time for you to put that score in. So if they chose the TCAP 4-8 literacy, then you would have to go in and manually put that score in for them. But you would just say custom feeder TCAP. It would say TCAP 4-8 literacy custom feeder in TN Compass.
So to clarify, all of the schools who generate one of these composites, those are automatically input in TN Compass. If a school does not generate one of these school-wide composites in those examples you gave, they will type in feeder, custom feeder, pick one of these composites, and then when those scores come in, they would touch base with the feeder school to find out what that composite number is, and then districts put in their feeder schools, right?
That's correct. That is correct.
The next question is it the recommendation to allow teacher choice for growth, or does the district pick all?
The district chooses the growth measure.
Teachers choose achievement.
Teachers choose the achievement. Districts choose growth.
Do principals have the option to use the wizard to upload their selections, to do the wizard import? Or is that a districts that have the wizard import?
I need to look at the permissions in TN Compass. I'm not sure if a principal has the permissions to import. I can look at that in just a minute.
And speaking of that, team configurators have the ability to, in the administration tab, to configure people to different access in TN Compass.
Right.
The next question is, we have 3 new schools that open this year. Will new schools generate individual, school-wide growth score? So would a new school have a school-wide growth score, or would a new school be a feeder school?
If the students have a prior testing history, yes. It depends. It's all going to depend on the students. That may be a one-off question we need to talk about. But if the students have a prior testing history, that school can generate, assuming you have enough students to generate.
Okay. If a school only takes TCAP, then we should select literacy. That is essentially the same as if we select TCAP literacy, correct?
Yes, if you only give TCAP, the literacy score and the TCAP 4-8 literacy will be the same.
Okay, that's all of our questions so far.
Okay. We can always come back to this if we need to.
Oh, I did see one that popped up on my phone, but I didn't see it pop up here, where someone said this document looks different from what they're seeing on the team website, but I don't see it in the chat any longer. The document you've been referring to can be found on the team website
under the growth tab. That's
And
correct.
it will say 2022.
Great catch up here. All right. So let's talk about achievement measure selections now. So once again, every educator must have an achievement measure selection in T-Encompass. Achievement measure options include state assessments, off-the-shelf assessments, TVAS composites, graduation rate, ACT and SAT assessments, early post-secondary exams, and industry certifications. These measures should align as closely as possible to what the educator teaches. And the achievement measures selection criteria needs to be set when the selection is made. It's going to be a whole lot easier to set that when they're making these selections than to try to do it at the end of the school year, because there's a lot of time that's passed and we have forgotten a lot of things during that time.
Amy, this might be a good place to clarify another question.
Okay.
Previously, we just talked about growth measures, and State Board Policy 5.201 states that districts have the final approval. Districts make those growth measure selections, while achievement measure selections are made with the teacher. And then there's information on our achievement tab. So if there's a disagreement between teacher and administration, some steps to take. But as far as growth, although many districts do discuss and talk through it with their teachers, districts choose the school-wide growth measure selection.
Yeah, the final decision on growth is with the district. I mean, it's a good practice to discuss it with your teachers, but the final decision is with the district.
And we have one more question that's saying the district or the evaluator, which I'm assuming means the principal of the school.
Yes.
I guess that would be a district decision.
That's a district decision. I mean, if a teacher disagrees with the principal, it probably can move up to the district level and somebody there is going to make that final decision.
On growth measures.
On the growth measure only.
Mm-hmm.
So on the team website, we have an achievement tab. There are lots of resources here. Resources are cross-linked here. You can get your growth and achievement measure FAQ is here. Achievement measure guidance is here, and the worksheet is here. Also, directions for importing the growth and achievement measures in T-Encompass. Again, this is the part that is changing for tested teachers. Tested teachers their achievement measure will count for 25%, their growth 35%, and their observation has dropped to 40%. So we're just going to look at the worksheet. This worksheet has been the same for a long time. It was the same when I was in a district. But just some things to point out here. Suggestions would be to make sure that this is filled out completely. Specifically, what specific measure? I get emails all the time. We chose Ames Web. I don't know what score to look at. That all needs to be worked out when the educator is filling this out. When the principal and the educator, whomever is working with the educators to fill this out, that all needs to be decided at the first, not on the back end. And then the rationale. Why did you choose this measure? Maybe the teacher is an ELA teacher for second grade and they decided to use that measure. Just why you decided to use that. And I also suggest being as specific as possible with this criteria. I'm not familiar with Ames Web reports, so I'll just throw out some examples that are probably not likely. Use the percent of students proficient would be as like, say it's 50% is what you're going to choose that for. So you want to be very specific, percent of students scoring at the proficiency level, and then scale up and down from there. The teacher chooses the measure, the district sets the scale. So you're going to want to work with your educators to set those scales. Some districts just scale them wholesale. Others do them individually. That is strictly the district's decision. So my suggestion is to be as specific as possible and give as much information on this. And this needs to be kept on file. probably at the school level, just so that it can be pulled back out at the end of the school year when people are starting to say, hey, what did we mean by this? So make sure it's very clear. This links to the growth and achievement measure imports. Chapter 99 is the law. Public chapter 991 is the one that changed those weightings. There will be more information about that. TVAS composites can be used as an achievement measure. So if you do that, you do not have to scale TVAS composites, but they are the exact same composites. This whole list of composites is the same list of composites that's on the growth measures worksheet guidance. So they can choose any of these for an achievement measure if they so choose. So that
we can't see your achievement measure worksheet. Are we supposed to be looking at that?
Oh, you are. Thank you. Need a keeper. How's this? Is that better? So this is where I want you to be real specific about what you're doing. So these are the exact same TVAS measures that we have for growth. They can choose those. You do not have to put in a scale for those because they're automatically scaled 1 to 5. This just gives you some background on what these assessments are. We have state measures that can be used. There's also some guidance for creating the criteria. I think you all are each other's best resources for that. Should you get into a situation where the district and the teacher cannot agree on the achievement measure and the scaling, we can do a mediation, which basically means you offer options, and the teacher can choose one. I'm sorry. This can be done at the district level at any time. There is guidance around that on the team website also. These are our measures for 22-23. They are grouped pre-K 8 and 9-12. So we start with the state assessments. These state assessments can be at the classroom, grade, or school level. Most of them are success rates. The success rate is simply the percent of students who scored, met, or exceeded expectation. So there are several resources for you to find these scores. When the accountability application is up, they release your scores there. There is a school level assessment file. If you want these by school level, you can filter that file and find these success rates at the school level. Grade level and classroom, you have to do a little more filtering to get to those. Classroom has to be figured individually. You can use your class rosters, your TCAP reports, class rosters to figure those classroom success rates.
Someone asked about CASE, CASE. I don't see that on here. Is CASE?
It is. It's an off-the-shelf measure. We'll get there in just a minute. It's an off-the-shelf measure. There is also a new measure. All of these have been measures for years on the achievement measure worksheet. There's a new achievement measure approved this year. It's the mock interim assessments from the department. Those are now approved to be an achievement measure. So if your teachers want to use those, if you use those in your district, your teachers can choose that as a mock interim, and you'll have to scale that. Then your TVAS composites, those are all the same choices we had before. And then we have the off-the-shelf measures. You'll notice that some off-the-shelf measures have been removed. We removed measures that had not been used in the last 3 to 4 years. So we've kind of shortened this list some just to make it more manageable. There is a new one here. It's CASE, ELA, and Math. That's the Collaborative Assessment Solutions for Educators. It used to be TE21, I believe is what it was called. And somebody told me the other day they thought they had sold. I'm not sure about that. But that is an approved measure for ELA and math for pre-K 8, whatever grade if you use that assessment, and you will just need to make your scales for that. All of the approved universal reading screeners are on here with some other assessments that have been approved in the past.
Amy, we have another question about CASE. The first one, what is CASE? And I think you just answered that. The second one says on page 7, and I'm not sure on what page 7, but it says it indicates that CASE is Mastery Connect. It bought out CASE. Can teachers use Mastery Connect as the option?
Yes, the CASE assessment is yes. Mastery Connect is part of CASE, or vice versa. I don't really know the way. It was submitted to us as CASE, and we reviewed the end of the year assessment for those, for ELA and math. So those meet the requirements. It's going to be, you need to be one of the benchmarks, not a teacher-made test in that one. Okay. So for 912, we have the EOC success rates, MOS, TCAP, ALT, and the WIDA assessment. Again, the mock interim is here. All of the TVAS composites are options for 912 teachers. Off the shelf gets a little bit narrower for high school. We have ACT Aspire, CASE again is on, iReady, MAP, the National Latin Exam, PMI, STAR, and STAR Reading. Graduation rate is also a measure that can be used as an achievement measure for high school. ACT, you can use the ACT or the SAT, and the early post-secondary exams, your AP assessments, Cambridge, IB, local dual credit, and statewide dual credit. Those are all available. The graduation rate in the ACT, you need to be specific about the year that you're using. And this is strictly a district decision. For this year's, if you're using the graduating class of 2022, you know those graduation rates are not final yet, and that is fine. You can put those in TN Compass at any point when they become final, or at any point. If you didn't file an appeal, you know what your graduation rate is, and you can go on and put it in there. ACT will be a little later. I don't believe they're going to be finalized until sometime in November. And that's fine. If LOEs generate before then, any teacher that uses one of these that doesn't have a measure in, as soon as you put that measure in, it will automatically generate their LOE. But we're not going to hold up LOEs until all of those are finalized. Industry certifications. There are lots of exams or industry certifications that will count towards an achievement measure. In the system, you will choose like advanced manufacturing, agriculture, food, natural resources, and any of these certifications can count toward a teacher. Any students to get those can count toward a teacher's achievement measure. And there are pages of these for each. Lots of pages. Okay. Any more questions?
Yes, ma'am. One is a comment, I believe.
Okay.
And again, if I'm reading anyone's question incorrectly, please feel free to clarify in the chat. But Stephen is saying that we can use reports in Pearson Access Next for performance level percentages. So I think that's maybe a resource that people could use to set scales. Someone is asking, can they use CASE Science or CASE Social Studies as an achievement measure? Science and Social Studies was not submitted for review this year. If you would like to submit it for review for next year, there on the team website, there is this place, I'll show you in just a minute, for submitting those measures for review. Basically, you're going to send it an email to team questions, and we can have those reviews. Short answer is no. No. You can, if you would like for those to be considered, please submit those for this year. The achievement measure titled Grades 3-8 Science Success Rate. Is the scale only based on grades 5-8 science?
That would be a district decision. I believe 3rd and 4th grade take a science assessment. You could use those scores if that's what you so choose for 3rd or 4th grade teacher.
So again, we would just need to make sure we clarify that on the worksheet.
Yes, I would be very specific when you're clarifying on your worksheet if you're using it at a school level. I would say school level science success rate grades. If you're going to use 5.8, if you're going to use 4.8, if you're going to use 3.8, if you're just going to use 3rd grade, be very specific about what you're putting there.
I think this is a comment, not necessarily a question, that CASE is an item bank of questions and Mastery Connect is the platform. There's another question. It says the deadline for entering achievement growth measures for 21-22 is October 17. When do we expect LOEs for 21-22 to be available?
We expect them to be available later this fall. We do not have an exact date at this point. What we're working on right now is with districts trying to get as many scores in as they can so that as many LOEs will generate on the first run.
This is a clarifying question. I'm going to read it slow because it's long.
Okay.
And tell me if I need to read it twice. How is TVOS going to be calculated for teachers in 21-22? If they have TVOS from both 2021 and 21-22, and the combined scores from those years is higher than the most recent 21-22 score, is it correct that the combined score or higher of the two scores will be what is used to calculate the LOE?
That is correct. So teachers who have scores from 2021 and 21-22 will have to, in your district files, your teacher district files, you saw those composites. They have a combined 21 and 22, and they have a single year 21-22. The highest of is the one that will be used to calculate their LOE, regardless of if they nullified or did anything else last year. That score is still there, and it's still a valid score, so that will be used only if it makes the score higher.
And I was looking to see that is explained on the team website.
It is. That is explained. Should I stop sharing? There is a guidance document on the team website. It's under statute and policy.
Mm-hmm. I believe it's the first. I
think it's the very first thing under statute and policy.
Okay, let's see. We have another question. No, I'm sorry. That's the last question.
Okay, said that.
And I will say while you're looking for that when the LOEs are generated, beside the LOE, there is a blue circle with an eye. And if you click on that, you will see how the LOE was calculated and which one was chosen, which calculation was chosen for the score.
This outlines all of the evaluation composites and how they're figured, what's in them, and how they work. So this will be useful for you for 21-22. And it is under statute and policy.
So, for example, that first one has 3 bullets for a tested teacher who has both 2021 and 21-22. All 3 will be in the calculation. I mean, the first 2 in the calculation, and that third bullet says the one that generates the highest LOE is the one that's used. So teachers and districts can see both calculations.
So essentially, if the 2021 and 21-22 composite is higher than the 21-22 single year, the multi-year one will be used. It's always going to be the highest one. That's this data. Yeah, the 21-22 data the 2021 data will still be a factor next year. Hopefully next year we will have 3 years worth of data for the first time in quite some time.
That's all of our questions, Amy.
All right, thank you. Get back to. All right. So we've kind of talked about some of these best practices as we've gone through. Have your building level administrators keep a copy of the achievement measure worksheets for each teacher. Be very specific about the achievement measure selected. If it's case, be specific. Those are just some examples. How you will measure this, the percentage of students scoring at X percent, or the percentage of students projected to score at this particular level. Which test is the score going to come from? If you're administering it 3 times, which test you're going to use? I would suggest you use the final one. Make sure that the score can be easily calculated. If it's a simple calculation that you do a lot, that's fine. If it's not, put your formula for calculating that on the worksheet somewhere, just so everybody is clear. And at the end of the year, it'll make it much easier for you to get these scores in. Your next steps are to share with building level administrators, share the resources with them, provide support to principals as they support teachers in making selections, upload those selections into TN Compass for 2021, and upload the achievement measure scores for 21-22. Our next office hours will be in October. We're going to talk about entering those final scores and finalizing LOEs. That doesn't mean we'll have LOEs by October the 20th. We're just going to talk about it at that point.
Here's a question. Are the gross scores generated from the Universal Reading Screener entered locally? And would you like me to answer the Universal Reading Screener question?
Yeah, they're not going to be entered locally. We will enter those for you. And we expect those to be in the next couple weeks, hopefully.
Those gross scores are generated at TD, or generated from the vendors, from scores from the vendors, and are sent to us. So districts will not have to calculate screeners' gross scores. There's another question. The administrator can record specifics about choices in the notes sections of TN Compass. For instance, if a teacher chooses off-the-shelf measure, the administrator can write Ameswell Reading School level in the notes. I think that's just a comment.
That's great. That's a great suggestion. Thank you.
I may be wrong, but I believe when you go in to make your off-the-shelf selections, you choose one of those off the shelf. You don't just choose the word off the shelf, right?
Yes.
You have.
Yes.
I mean, it's going to tell
say
you which
Ameswell
one.
Or.
Here's another question. If an alternate to portfolio from 21-22 was omitted in error, how can it be added now? I've tried administrative edits, but the field is not active in the edit mode. Districts cannot upload
portfolio scores.
Portfolio scores or alternative to the portfolio. If this person asking did one of our pilots where districts did send us and they did upload, you could email us one off and we'll see, we can go back into that data file, but otherwise, no, districts don't upload gross scores. Amy, you do choose the off the shelf, but you are not given the options of a subject and a level in the drop down.
Right. Yeah, you choose your off the shelf measure. But it doesn't give you this specificity of the level in that you just choose the measure. That's if I'm understanding correctly, the other information you will put on your worksheet.
Yeah. Okay. And if this person is still not clear, you can email us as well at Team Questions. Okay. What is the date these choices should be? What's the deadline for growth and achievement measures for 22-23, the selections. Yeah. While you're looking that up, I will say all of our team deadlines are on the homepage of team-tn.org. And on that homepage, you will find all of our deadlines.
December the 2nd. We'd like to, they need to be in by the end of the first semester, December the 2nd.
And then someone is asking about the pie graph that shows the percentages. Currently, the only place to find that on the team website is in your teacher evaluator handbook. But Amy, you mentioned we will have another meeting and more information coming out with all the guidelines for the new 22-23 calculations, correct?
Yes, we are working diligently to get that out to you.
I don't see any more questions.
Okay, I'm going to stop recording. And you all may want to ask each other some